I want to take folks back into court. The defendant's adopted son, Angel Ricci, is now on the stand. Let's get you back into court.
And after specifically January 28th, when something happened at your house, did you go and live with another family member for a couple months?
My grandfather's.
And then eventually you were able to move back to Marine Street.
Yeah.
And where was your bedroom in the Marine Street house?
Basement.
And prior to January 28th of 2021, who else lived in the house at Marine Street?
Is it prior? So beforehand?
Yes.
Me, my sister, dad, and mom.
Okay. And if it's okay, I want to talk about those people that you just mentioned, your sister, your mom, and your dad. Who's your mom? What's her name?
Christine Ricci/Sanchez.
And do you see her in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Can you just tell us something that she's wearing? Like a color of a piece of clothing she's wearing?
Blazer. Beige blazer.
May the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant?
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
The record will so reflect.
In January of 2021, did your mom work?
I believe so. It would have been online Zumba, I believe.
Okay. And other than kind of doing Zumba, did you know her to have any other jobs outside the house, or was she primarily kind of at home?
Most part at home.
Did you know if she was engaged in any classes during that time period?
School, I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. And would that be college or high school?
Yes, college.
And do you know what she was studying at that time?
Psychology would have been would be my best guess.
Okay. And you also mentioned that during that time period, your father was living in the home.
Yeah.
Who is your father?
Michael Joseph Ricci.
And is that your biological father?
No.
When did you come to know Michael?
My whole life.
Your whole life?
Yeah.
And at some point, did he become your father legally?
2004.
And so in 2004, did Michael legally adopt you?
Yes.
And is that when you took the Ricci name?
Yes.
And so what did you call him? What did you call Michael?
I've always called him Dad.
Always Dad?
Yeah.
And did you know what Michael did for a living?
Firefighter. And then part-time he had the fire sprinkler company stuff. So whatever that entitles.
Okay. And did he work with a particular person that you and your family knew at the fire sprinkler company?
One of them, Mark McDonald, would have been his higher up.
Okay. Is that somebody that you knew as a family friend?
Yeah, we would have referred him as uncle through my father, yeah.
And your father passed away, correct?
Yeah.
And when was that he passed away?
January either 27th or 28th, 21.
Do you know how old he was when he passed away?
'57? I can't remember.
Okay. You also mentioned at that time in January of 2021, your sister was living in the home, right? What's your sister's name?
Sophia.
And how old is she?
20.
And do you have any other siblings?
Michael. Little Michael.
Little Michael. And so fair to say he's a junior.
Yeah.
And is that what you and the family call him, as Little Michael?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, in January of 2021, was Michael Jr. living in the home on Marine Street?
That month?
Yes.
No.
Do you know when?
All right, so 3 kids in the Ricci household. There was Angel, who was the oldest but not the biological son of Michael Ricci, then Michael Jr., who was the middle child. Sophia was the youngest. All right, we need to take a break. The defendant's son continues his testimony on direct examination. When we return, keep it here on Court TV.
I'm Kelly Craft in Bradenton, Florida, covering the Black Swan murder trial. You're watching Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. We're continuing our coverage in the murder trial of Christine Ricci in Massachusetts. Now, she claims she killed her husband, Michael, in self-defense when he tried to attack her. Well, the couple's son is now on the stand on direct examination. Let's get back into court.
Do you know when Michael stopped living at the house on Moraine Street, when he moved out?
I can't give you the exact date, but I can say prior, before, like there was at least 2 years before my father's passing.
Okay, so 2 years before 2021, you think he moved out?
Yeah.
And at the time in January of 2021, did Michael still have a room at the Moraine Street house with like where his belongings would be, or he could sleep if he stayed?
No. My parents were working things out with him to try to like grab what he needs when he left. And then the rest was just kind of like, it's whatever.
Did he have a bedroom there growing up?
Yeah. So he had it growing up, but my mom eventually turned it into like her own like personal workout zone once he moved out officially.
Okay. Now, can you tell us a little bit about your parents' relationship back in 2018? What was their relationship like?
Exactly 2018 or?
Around that time period. Well, maybe I can ask you a different question if that's...
Yeah, I mean, like I would need like a...
Sure. So growing up, did your parents appear to have a good relationship in your eyes as a child?
Most part, yeah.
Okay. At some point as you got older and became an adult, did you see their relationship change?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously, yeah.
Was there any particular event that you can recall in your parents' marriage where you started to see that change?
The affair.
Okay, and when you say the affair, what do you mean?
My mom finding out that my father cheated on her.
And did you learn that from both your mother and your father, that had been what happened?
Just through arguments and stuff, yeah.
And so when your mother learned about the affair, did you notice changes in her demeanor on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
What kinds of things did you notice changed?
Secluded. Like angry, I guess, like just like at just the situation she was in, and confused too at the same time.
Okay. So would you hear her yell a lot more than you had heard her yell in the past?
Yeah, I mean those past 3 years to his final day was like abnormal as it could come, you know, like the fights were just ongoing, you know, so that wasn't normal, having that many fights, and then on top of it that long of a period of time fights are going on. That wasn't normal at all.
Okay. And would you be around hearing and seeing these fights?
Yeah, without even me like having a point. Like if I was in the basement, there was no getting away from it. So I was just, I could hear the muffles and stuff and loudness, and it's just, yeah.
Okay. And would you hear both your mom and your dad's voices during those arguments?
Yeah.
Would there be any one voice that you'd hear more than the other in those arguments?
Objection, Your Honor.
He can answer it if he knows.
I can't necessarily say because there'd be times where one would overtake the other, and so it's...
Okay. Anything else that you observed about the changes in your mom's demeanor, how she would behave around the house after she learned of the affair?
I think she just wanted the truth. Like that, she was just persistent. She was persistent about getting the truth.
Okay. What about the house itself? Prior to her learning of the affair, what was the kind of state of your house? Was it always neat and tidy, or?
Objection, Your Honor.
Basis?
Relevance.
Overruled.
So was the house kind of neat and tidy before?
It got to a point where like it seemed like my father was picking up the slack.
So would you see your dad kind of pick everything up?
Right. Well, like.
All right, we need to step away here for a moment. When we return, Angel Ricci continues testifying about his mother and father's turbulent relationship. With here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
One of the most successful true crime TV shows ever.
This is crazy.
Now has a new home on America's original true crime obsession, 48 Hours on Court TV. Coming up next on Court TV.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, key testimony from the Black Swan murder trial. And a pregnant Georgia teenager found dead in the woods. Will bring you everything we know about her alleged killer.
Closing Arguments tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
All right, folks, we'll get back to court in just a minute, but first let's bring back in our guest trial attorneys, Alexis Rosenberg and Vonda Sargent. Alexis, I'll start with you. The state started with the daughter, Sophia. They followed that up now with another child, Angel, and he's the adopted son, has very nice things to say about the victim in this case. But again, he is someone who was not in the house at the time, but he's going to be like a scene setter. Again, someone to give us some context as to the relationship between those two. Very important for the state.
I agree, because what he's testifying, this was a very hostile house. There was a lot of tension going on, and the testimony states that the mother was very angry about this affair. She seemed to not be able to be moving past, seemed to be escalating. What hasn't come out, and I'm curious to wait to hear, is whether they're going to elicit testimony about whether it escalated to physical. Because right now we've only heard there's been a lot of yelling and everybody seemed to be hiding to get away from this, and it was going on a regular basis. But we haven't gotten, was there anything that became physical during these arguments?
Yeah, well, we heard nothing on the part, at least as what the kids saw, on the part of the father, but there will be testimony, according to pretrial motions, that people saw him, the victim, with bruises and also a cut. Well, the daughter did talk about a cut lip. So I think there was some violence going from the defendant to the victim. Vonda, quickly, a lot of this we're talking about, a lot of the testimony that's being elicited now from these first two witnesses goes to motive. Now, we certainly know that the state doesn't need to prove motive, but in a case like this, where the only real living witness is the defendant to this, and she's likely going to testify and tell her story, the idea of motive becomes very, very important for this jury to understand what really happened between those two.
You know, I agree with you on that. They don't have to prove it, but I think that Angel did give us the motive. One line that really stuck out to me was that she was persistent on getting the truth, which means she was ruminating about this. It went on and on for years on end, and he couldn't get away from the fighting. So I agree with Alexis 100% that there was a lot of hostility, a lot of tension in that household. And Angel told us that she was persistent on getting at the truth, which means she was just going on and on and on. And I don't think there was anything that Michael could have said to her to fulfill what it is that she needed to hear from him about why he cheated on her. And so it's pretty clear to me that it's the cheating was the motivation for the mom to finally snap and end Michael's life, according to the state's theory of the case.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way at this point. All that tension in the house seemed to be coming from her and her inability to deal with the idea that he had this affair and get past it. All right, let's get back into court now. The son of the defendant and the victim is testifying about, again, the troubles between his parents.
Well, so she would do what she could, but then like the whole house was affected, like in depression wise and everything. So like, it's kind of hard for a lot of us to do stuff. So when he come back from work or whatever, he do what he can.
Now, kind of jumping forward for a moment to the weeks prior to your dad's death, did you notice changes in his demeanor at that time?
Yeah. Thank you.
What did you notice about your dad's demeanor?
He was the same way kind of too, but like he was isolated before all the arguments and stuff. But it kind of seemed like he was trying to really either deal with what was going on or try to fix it. I saw like a lot of separation going on during the time, but then when they were together, it was either like very rarely it would have been like towards the end would have been the bonding experience was very like limited over the fighting, if that makes sense. So like the arguments would just overtakes what the good memory would have been if the argument wasn't in place, if that makes sense.
And is that something you observed between your parents?
Yeah.
Now, how about your relationship with your dad? Did you see some changes with your relationship with your dad in the few weeks?
Until he got sober.
What do you mean until he got sober?
Once he started getting sober is when I was able to like. My whole life I had a fear of my dad. So.
And did that change when he got sober? Is that a yes? You just have to answer out loud.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. And so did you find yourself coming closer with him at that time when he was sober?
Yeah, we were talking more.
Now, in the weeks prior to his death, did you still hear and see fighting in the household?
Following up?
Yeah, leading up to.
Yeah.
And did you see kind of your father either after a fight happened or kind of in the midst of one, what he would do during those fights?
Smoke.
And where would he do that?
Side door. So if there's only 2 doors we enter from the house, front door, side door.
Okay, but would it be inside or outside the house?
Outside.
And so where would your mom be when he would be outside smoking a cigarette?
If she wasn't out there with him, in the house somewhere. I mean, mostly in her room, just trying to stay away from it, you know?
When you would hear, excuse me, the fighting between your mom and dad, could you hear what they were fighting about?
I mean, like when I would have to, like, just like a passing ear. And it would just be like the same same broken record type of situation. Just a whole lot of just trying to figure things out. It's what it sounded like, you know.
And when you say trying to figure things out, was there any particular thing that your parents were trying to figure?
The affair.
You mentioned your dad getting sober. Do you remember when that happened, that he stopped drinking?
I know he had his 1-year chip, I believe. Possibly 2 years, I'm not sure.
Okay. When he would drink, what would he drink?
I mean, depends, but majority probably would be Bud Light.
And what were your observations of him when he would be drinking?
Didn't want to be messed with.
Okay. So does that mean he would be by himself?
Majority of times. Yeah.
Okay. And would he do it in the house or someplace else?
Inside the house, and if he had to go outside, there'd be some stash somewhere for him to drink on. So.
Did you see a change in his interaction with the family when he became sober?
Yeah. He was like a lot more open, it felt like, or seemed like. But like, it seemed like his anger wasn't as bad as before.
The effect on these kids, it's palpable. It's just sad to watch. All right, that's going to do it for our coverage of the wife stabs murder trial.